You're listening to the Complete Human podcast, hosted by co-founders Janna and Evan DeMarco. We share authentic conversations about wellness, longevity, personal growth, and biooptimization, along with inspiring stories that encourage community and social responsibility. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Complete Human Podcast with your host,
Janna
and Evan DeMarco. We're sitting here kind of fighting right now because I think we've gone COVID stir crazy. It's just weird. Like, you're just acting all sorts of funky.
You know, it's weird times.
It is weird times.
I know. You just can't blame each other, can't blame the world. I feel like we all get a pass this year.
What does that look like?
A pass?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Although I hear that all the time now. People say this on social media. They're like, this year doesn't count. You know, this one, just whatever happens this year just isn't.
It's a mulligan.
Yeah.
But it's not true. And that's, there still is this desperate attempt. We've talked about this in the past, where people think that they're going to go back to this normal way of life.
Mm-mm.
And if COVID has done anything, it has hopefully woken us up to the idea that the way that we live has to change.
And, well, you posted about this yesterday. It has changed. It's fundamentally different now. I don't know if it'll ever be back to what we think it was.
And it shouldn't be, right? We were sitting in our own cesspool of bad decisions. Like, why do we want to go back to that? Why do we want to go back to a toxic planet with polluted oceans and bad politics and just people being mean to each other? It's like, why do we pine for that? Like, who looks back on 2019 with this? Like, yeah, we were crushing it.
Well, I didn't think I was crushing it in 2019, but maybe in hindsight, comparatively speaking, who knows?
You know, this is our chrysalis moment, right? We're all a bunch of caterpillars getting ready to climb into our chrysalis.
Spread the wings!
Yes, and hopefully emerge as something better. And not to take anything away from the caterpillar, but the metamorphosis to our next evolution has to take place. I think that was actually one of the things that we wanted to talk about, was our next evolution.
It's a great segue.
It is.
So we watch this. We like to watch documentaries now or something. I guess I feel like this is like a topic of conversation for us now. But we watched Unnatural Selection, and it is a 4-part series on all about genetic engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating stuff. Like, kind of a mindfuck because it's controversial, but you're still super intrigued. I thought it was pretty good.
It was great, and it did a good job of shining a light on the potential as well as the pitfall. And think about Jurassic Park, right? You saw Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you first see the dinosaurs, you're like, holy shit, that was such an amazing moment, cinematic moment. And that came out of genetic engineering. It came out of our understanding of how DNA works, how we can replicate that, how we can use DNA as a code to create life. And a lot of people talk about that playing God. We'll get to that in a second. But there is this amazing potential with genetic engineering. Then CRISPR-9 came out, and we understood how we could piggyback genetic changes onto a bacteria and how quickly and rapidly we could do that. So now, as they talk about, or as Ian Malcolm talks about in Jurassic Park, is we've been so busy trying to figure out if we could, we haven't really stopped to think if we should. And so what does the next stage of human evolution look like? Now, we talked to an interesting gentleman today who brought this up, is that 300 years worth of Homo sapien evolution hasn't brought us to this point where this is where we're supposed to end up, right? We are supposed to continue to evolve. Mm-hmm. And does genetic engineering play a part in that? Is that designer babies? Mm-hmm. Is that super soldiers? Is that, you were born a certain way and now we're going to change you, we're going to genetically modify you? Is that allowing people to live forever? So within the potential of genetic engineering comes a whole host of problems that we are so ill-equipped to deal with as a species.
Well, I was just about to mention, genetic engineering. Is this an idea? Is this a concept that excites you, or is it kind of worrisome?
It's a gun. A gun in the right hands, whether that's a police officer, and let's please not turn this into a Black Lives Matter conversation, whether that's in someone hunting, is a powerful and useful tool. A gun in the hands of my 6-year-old daughter is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're a bunch of 6-year-old girls running around with this awesome power.
Yeah.
We don't know how to use it. We're not responsible for it, and we certainly have no accountability to the future for the power that we're creating.
Well,
what do you think on that?
I mean, it's exciting stuff. I think it's fascinating. I think that it can be used for a lot of good. I think my concern is also there's also so much unknown and so much, research and science that we need to understand to know what are the long-term consequences of this. What does our planet look like if everyone's living to like 300 years old? What and then what happens if everyone doesn't have disease, or maybe they were cured of that disease, but then they got something else because of this genetic editing? And it's like, what does it look like? No one knows. But the interesting thing is, in that documentary, they were saying that this is happening whether we like it or not. There's going to be genetic engineering, and these modalities in our society, this is going to happen regardless. So
It is happening.
It is.
Has
It is.
happened.
It has and that's almost the craziest part is I didn't necessarily know that people were in their garages injecting mice and dogs and like
or themselves
and like doing this kind of editing on themselves at home. And so this is out there already. This is already, I mean, who knows? Maybe the rats running around here, the squirrels, maybe they're not actually 100% organic. Who knows?
Well, and let's talk about it, right? Take a step back. You brought something up. Genetically modified organisms, GMO, right? People get freaked out about that. Like, oh my God, my corn is GMO. My strawberries are GMO. Well, genetics have a way of, plants, human beings, we have a way of evolving anyway, right? And that's going to be changes to our DNA. That's passed down from one generation to the next. And whether you're, a plant, whether you're a human being, whether you're a rhinoceros, there are genetic changes that are passed down. So genetic modification is a natural thing. We're speeding that up exponentially. So yes, the squirrels out here, and they're very muscular.
I'm not kidding. The other day, there was this one squirrel chasing another one. I could tell it was like a boy trying to get with the girl, and she was like not having it. I had to break up a squirrel fight in the backyard. Like, and I know that sounds insane, but I was out there, no, and trying to just split them up. Anyway.
So you saved a squirrel from sexual assault?
I did.
Nice.
And she thanked me. She brought me a nut later. Shut up. No.
Cinnamon.
Right, cinnamon.
So we take a step back and we look at genetically modified crops and what does that mean? So we've got this technology. David Sinclair has taken a very altruistic approach to what happens as we start to implement some of these technologies, and he thinks that we'll rise to the occasion, that we as a species can start to live longer and that we can start to be better stewards of our planet. I don't know, and this is what scares me, right, is you take people who are very, very, let me put it this way. Human wants are infinite. Human resources are finite. So we always want everything, right? We want every experience. We want every food. We want all of these different things. The time frame of our life allows or makes it impossible for us to have all of those. So we always have to balance the opportunity cost of our decisions. What I do today doesn't allow me to do something else, which means that on a long enough timeline, I might not get that experience. When we start to live longer, or the potential of genetic engineering stipulates that we could live almost forever, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
So the wants are still infinite and the resources are still finite.
Right.
Now, when you've got people, generation after generation after generation, all battling for the same resources on that long timeline, I think that we're ultimately going to fuck it up.
Janna Breslin here. As most of you know, I grew up playing sports which required lots of intensive training. A couple years ago, I switched to CrossFit style workouts, and let's just say my body has taken an absolute beating over the years. I remember waking up after heavy workouts, barely being able to get out of bed. I always added fish oil to my daily regimen for overall wellness and to help combat the post-workout muscle soreness, but my joints and muscles would still be sore for days. I needed something more than just omega-3 fish oil. That's why I take Complete Human PRM Response. This daily super supplement helps my body resolve inflammation quickly so I can live pain-free and keep training. I've been taking it for a while now, and my workouts are better, my recovery is faster, and overall I just feel great. I know we all need a good omega-3 product, and PRM Response is the next generation in omega-3 supplementation with unique pre-resolving mediators that help resolve inflammation quickly so we can get back in the game of life. Head on over to store.completehuman.com to try it 20% off with the code PRM20. Well, and this brings up an interesting topic as we talk about how we want to live as long as we possibly can. I'd love to live to 150 or beyond, right? But what happens when, let's say, everyone lives that long? What does that look like when people aren't dying? We're already overpopulated. What is I mean
It doesn't look pretty.
It doesn't. And
so then the question becomes, does genetic engineering become only available for the uber rich?
what's that book that I'm listening to right now? Price of Time?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who the author is. I forget the author's name, but I'm listening to a book called The Price of Time on Audible, and it's this exact topic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the middle of it, so if you want to kind of explain maybe what that idea is, or
Well, the concept is simple, right? Is a scientist comes up with the idea to stop the aging process, and they recognize, or the group of scientists recognize, that they can't release the technology on the planet. It's irresponsible of them because human beings are not equipped to deal with immortality. So they take it amongst themselves, and then they utilize that to do exactly what you think people would do with forever. You know, it's not like they're off saving baby seals every single day. There's a darker side to humanity, and as much as we rise to the occasion, always we seem to find a way. That's in our DNA. When I guess we have to ask is that ability to rise, is that ability to overcome, predicated a little bit on the knowledge that ultimately we're going to die? And if you take that away, do we become so apathetic to the human condition that we just don't give a fuck anymore? Like, does it become anarchy? And science fiction, we talked about this earlier, science fiction always has this way of becoming kind of a cautionary tale for this. And all of these stories that talk about immortality all kind of lead to the same thing, is it doesn't end well.
Right. Well, there's the immortality in the living longer aspect. And then there's also the genetic modifications for superhuman strength, for intelligence, for certain looks, for anything like that. And then so maybe take longevity aside, what happens when humans are now superhumans and they're out there and they're not technically all natural?
All right, so if I could genetically alter you, what would you want?
Oh, it would be for like a limitless mind and brain, and just a completely I would never lose a memory. I could retain every single possible thing that I read. I could remember any possible thing that ever happened. For me, it would be cognitive. It'd be mental.
Cool.
What about you?
Smaller penis. My back is killing me.
Oh, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that happened.
Cinnamon.
Oh,
But
God, my back.
But for real, like what would
my superpower be?
Yeah. If you could genetically engineer yourself to be better or optimal in any way, what would that be?
I'm going to answer a question with a question. So, guys, the guys out there watching, that ultimately when you get together with a bunch of other guys and you start drinking, it devolves into the dumbest conversations of all time. Now, guys, especially one of my friends who's a jock or used to be a jock or thinks he's an athlete, would always ask questions like this. Well, if you could choose between your kid being an athlete or being smart, which would you choose? And I always said smart, right? Absolutely, without reservation. Athletic ability can be taken away. Accidents, injury, things like that. So in this situation, when I think about this, is what is essential to stand the test of time? What gives the most robust human experience? And I think it is cognitive. I think that your ability to process information, to disseminate information, to think critically, to expand the frontiers of the human experience through our own cerebral capacities is what really gives us the greatest contribution to humanity. So yeah, I mean, I would absolutely say like dial me up to an Einstein level type of thing.
Yeah, if you can genetically modify me to be genius level, I would take that all day.
Totally.
Yeah. So then
Do you want a smaller penis?
Yes, please. So also, I mean, so these are our choices, but what are your thoughts on maybe implementing these into children, people that don't necessarily have the choice? What if they don't want to be an athlete? What if they, I don't know, I'm just thinking, what if they wanted brown eyes and you gave them blue? It's like, is that okay to then subject your child or someone that doesn't necessarily have a say and have them change fundamentally?
Let's turn that around and look at it in a different sense. If you knew that genetically you were going to pass a deficit onto your kids, sickle cell anemia,
Right.
Alzheimer's, something like that, and we could go in and we could change that, is that the child's choice to rid themselves of the potential of a lifetime of disease?
Right.
The answer is no. So when we start playing God in that respect, it's kind of what's good for the goose has got to be good for the gander. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it, right? Like if my kid is pissed at me because when they turn 20, they're like, I wish I would have had blue eyes instead of brown. I'm like, go screw yourself. Like you don't have sickle cell anemia.
Right.
You can bench press a Buick.
Right.
So I think it ultimately comes down to what is our value proposition going to be? Why are we genetically modifying people? But I also think, like, what is the limit, right? Because if we know that all of these genes, this DNA is just on and off switches, we can reprogram someone to be bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. We can reprogram people to, dial down their empathy or their apathy genes so they're better soldiers. They're, like all of these different things. Like, at what point does it become too much? And at what point do we evolve from human beings into almost cyborgs?
Right. And this is where I'm kind of a little caught in between. I'm not sure where I stand. This excites me, and I think there's so much good and positive and a lot of benefit that can come from this. However, I can also see it being taken too far where the human aspect is taken out of humanity. And then, I don't know, you know me, I kind of love like just organic, natural things and
Squirrels.
and squirrels and plants and stuff. So it excites me in that way because I think there's a lot of amazing potential. It also worries me because I can see it being taken too far and some stuff like that. And then how does that affect? How does that affect the globe after that? I mean honestly, if everyone's turned into like a cyborg and kind of just superhuman, people with no feelings and no fear and all that, it's like what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. And you're always going to have like it's going to be like the anti-vaxxers or the people who they don't do it. There's going to be the people who can't afford it. So you're going to have this disparity. The people who do genetic engineering for their own benefit. You're going to have the people who don't for choice, and then you're going to have the people who don't because they can't. And I kind of think back to that Justin Timberlake movie with Amanda Seyfried, where it's like, you're born with the watch in your wrist, and it's called like In Time.
And it's like a countdown or to when your day is, yeah.
And one of the rich people in the movie said, for many to live, or for a few to live forever, many must die. And there's an element to that. But what we're seeing with CRISPR editing is that it's become democratized in the sense that you can buy a CRISPR kit and do it in your garage, right?
Right.
Now, all of these kit companies are saying, well, this is for educational purposes only, but there was that guy who ended up injecting himself on Facebook, the AIDS patient, trying to... So this is one of those things, guys. I mean, like, we wanted to have a fun conversation about genetic engineering and where does this lead, but it really opens up the idea that we have to be responsible with technology and we have to be educated, and then we have to kind of decide where do we want our future to go.
Yeah, well, and that is the thing, because this is happening, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And I know the majority of what we think, we like this idea. But I also think that I'm also more comfortable when I know more of the facts and the science, like, okay, well, what are the side effects and stuff like that. And
that's the thing. If we get really good at genetic engineering, you can almost mitigate them, theoretically. But you know, we
But
talked.
then, yeah, whoever we interviewed, today, it was, we discussed that, like, we are technically genetically engineering ourselves. We've been doing it with pharmaceuticals, with vaccines, with all these things that are modifying our insides little by little. And then, I mean, it just, you change. Fundamentally, you change, and the species changes over time
Mhm.
when you keep injecting stuff like that. I'm not an anti-vax or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, everything can be modified, especially over time.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, there's a conversation that's taking place in the world right now about the RNA-based vaccines that are, for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of misinformation about what that does. Does that change our DNA? No. Does it allow the vaccine to be more effective? Conceivably. And there's a lot of just basic high school science, but there's a lot of higher end science. And what do these things do? Should we be concerned? Of course we should be concerned. We're jamming a vaccine through a regulatory agency
Right.
in the
Quickly.
quickest time
Yeah.
in history. So we should be concerned about it. But we also have to get to the point where if we don't allow these technologies to flourish and grow at the exponential rate in which they do, there's going to be the fringe component. And I actually want to talk about like abortion, right? It's the same but completely different in the sense that when we outlawed abortion, what happened? It didn't stop abortions. It just drove people into dangerous back alley abortions where, doctors, people who weren't doctors were performing these things.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality of care went completely down. People were dying. People were, unable to reproduce after the fact.
Right.
So when we start to police and regulate a technology that becomes so widely available, what do? Is we put it into the shadows, and in the shadows it can flourish as a completely negative thing.
Right.
So part of it is how does the FDA, a government body that is filled with amazing people trying to do a job but still a very large bureaucratic agency, keep up with the technology? And the answer is that they don't. But we have to kind of operate in this gas and brake concept, right? Like science is the gas, regulation is the brake. You can't drive a car without both of those.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
That's my 2 cents. You might have just overpaid.
I've never heard that before. It's a good one. Yeah, and it's a fascinating topic because this is happening whether we like it or not. People are doing it in their garages and their backyards, and they're, even injecting animals into the wild that are now, and they're procreating. So who knows actually how inundated we are with just this thing. And
it's a runaway technology that we're not gonna understand for years.
Mm-hmm. So if it's happening regardless, what, I don't, and I'm sure there are organizations and everything happening to where we can do this properly, but it is a thing where it is being done outside of scientific laboratories. And
if genetic power is the most powerful power that we've ever wielded as a species, do these become extinction level events? Does the guy who wants to genetically modify mice in, wherever it was, New Zealand, or no, he wanted to genetically modify rats so they would stop killing the bird population. Like, what happens, right? Like, you think it's a benign thing. We're just going to do this small tweak
to help this one thing.
Yeah, and
but what is the chain
effect.
reaction, right? Yeah. What is the reaction down the road? And who knows? I mean, that's
where it gets into playing Jesus Cristo.
Yeah, you're right. Well, cool. I mean, what else do we want to talk about with genetic engineering?
I don't know. My back hurts. So.
Okay. Yeah, we gotta get your treatment.
All right, guys. This is kind of one of those random conversations, but
Yeah.
it's, we've been talking a lot about it, and as COVID has forced us to watch a little bit more TV than I think we're used to, it's brought up some interesting conversations. It's brought up some interesting ideas, especially as it pertains to technology that was once thought, centuries away, but is now really kind of staring us in the face. And so, as Michael Crichton wrote in 1990 about dinosaurs that came out about genetic engineering, we're only 30 years from that.
Yeah.
From that moment. So.
It's here.
It's here. It's right on our doorstep, and you can actually order it on your doorstep. And we don't recommend that.
Right.
But if you do, send us pictures.
Right. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah. In fact, we're going to start a Facebook, an Instagram thread on this one. If you could genetically modify yourself to do one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. So make sure to jump in on the Instagram page, and the MySpace page, and
The YouTube, all that. Yeah, let us know. I mean, if you could be genetically engineered and have something fixed or enhanced or whatever, what would it be? We say the mind.
Yeah.
And I like that we said that. I actually didn't know what I was going to say going into that. I've never thought about that before. What would I do? And I'm happy that I think that way. I'm happy that I chose my mind. I'm happy you thought that too.
There's a lot of things that we can do. Actually, before we sign off, there's a really great book, and I'm going to put it in the show notes because I don't remember the name of it. But it dealt with this subject, and what the government did was they regulated through, I don't even know what the mechanism was, is that each new genetic edit would cost exponentially more. So the average person could afford one. The super rich could afford two, and then like the Bill Gates and the Elon Musk of the world could maybe afford three. And then some guy finds a way to work around that, and he does like 1 million modifications and becomes Superman type of thing. But it was a very interesting concept of maybe that's the economic way to do it is that you're only limited to like one modification. So that's a cool question, right? If you could only have one thing, we can go in and genetically modify you for anything. What is that?
Yeah. Fascinating topic. We love it.
Yeah. We're science geeking out a little bit.
We are.
Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this was just a weird, fun genetic modification episode of the Complete Human Podcast with your host,
Janna Breslin.
And Evan DeMarco. Make sure to listen and subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever platform you choose, but although nobody else listens to anything besides iTunes. Sorry, anybody else.
It's just the one to do it at, yeah.
It's the one. Also, definitely make sure on YouTube we've got some fun stuff coming up there, including a blooper and gag reel, which I'm excited to share. Mainly it's just her.
We like to have fun. Yeah.
What about butt?
We should just end this now.
See you next week.
Bye, guys.